We'll give you a cash lump sum that equals 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to an amazing £20,000. We'll also throw in an extra £5,000 on top of that for good measure. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good evening to you and welcome to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Coming up on the show tonight.
This victory, and it is a victory, is not my victory. It's not Gwen and the Conservatives. This is your victory.
This is your victory there. Moments ago, Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, addressed a celebration in her own constituency of Waterlooville, as the former retail premises will no longer be used to house migrants. We'll be speaking to the former Home Secretary in just a moment's time, live from the scene with our man Charlie Peters. Meanwhile, new police guidance has urged forces to publish high-profile suspects' nationality and ethnicity in what could be a sign that the authorities are learning the lessons of Southport. But is Big Brother watching you? Because police have rolled out facial recognition vans as a means of cracking down on serious offenders. Is that a price worth paying, or are we risking falling down the slippery slope of a surveillance society? And finally, as the US Vice President meets a stellar lineup of British patriots, including Nigel Farage and Thomas Bosch Skinner, I'll be joined by JD Vance's UK confidant on who was who at the Cotswolds meeting. And that's all coming your way, but first, let's crack straight into your news headlines, and here's Cameron Walker.
Martin, good evening. It is 1 minute past 7. I'm Cameron Walker here in the GB newsroom. The Manchester Arena bomb plotter Hashim Abedi has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after 4 prison officers were injured at HMP Frankland in County Durham in April. Abedi has also been charged with 1 count of assault occasioning actual bodily harm and 1 count of unauthorised possession of a knife or offensive weapon. He is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court next month and remains in prison. The largest number of migrants ever recorded on one vessel has crossed the English Channel, with 107 people packed onto an 18-metre inflatable. The extra-long boat was intercepted and taken to Dover Harbour, where it is being examined by Border Force. Officials warn the bigger boats could carry many more migrants per crossing at a time when arrivals have already reached record levels. Meanwhile, and as you've been hearing, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has said the scrapping of a plan to house asylum seekers in a Hampshire town centre is a victory for the British people. Anti-immigration protests were sparked when it was revealed officials plan to accommodate migrants in the middle of Waterlooville, but have since changed their mind. Miss Braverman, who's the local MP, addressed the crowds earlier.
We are people who love this country, and we're willing to stand up for it. It is not racist to want to control our borders. It is not xenophobic to want to take care and protect our towns. It is not racist to stand up for our country and for our children.
And Suella Braverman will be live on GB News shortly. Meanwhile, live facial recognition is being rolled out across England and Wales as part of a major overhaul of neighbourhood policing. 10 camera-equipped vans will be used by 7 police forces to target suspects wanted for the most serious crimes. The Home Office says the algorithm has been independently tested and will be used only in specific circumstances with robust oversight, but privacy campaigners have raised concerns. President Zelensky has warned President Trump that Putin was bluffing about his desire to end the war in Ukraine. In the last couple of hours, President Trump said that if his meeting with the Russian president goes well on Friday, he would like to have a second meeting with Putin and President Zelensky together. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the planned meeting has created a viable chance of a ceasefire, but Britain stands ready to increase pressure on Russia if necessary. And finally, the Princess of Wales has released a special summer message.
Our lives flourish when we cherish the bonds of love and friendship. So open your hearts. Sing, dance, play.
The Princess says it's never been more important to appreciate the value of one another as she launches her latest Mother Nature video on social media, celebrating the peak of British summer. Catherine previously credited the great outdoors for helping her with her own cancer recovery. Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. More in an hour.
Thank you, Cameron Walker. Now, welcome back to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Now, moments ago, we saw astonishing scenes from Waterlooville where Suella Braverman addressed a crowd of jubilant local attendees after Havant Borough Council said that it had been informed by the government a former retail premise in Waterlooville had now been deemed unsuitable for migrant accommodation. Now, here was the former Home Secretary just a few moments ago.
Now, this victory, and it is a victory, is not my victory. It's not Gwen and the Conservatives. This is your victory. This is a victory for Waterlooville. This is a victory for the British people. So thank you for the courage. Thank you for your moral clarity. And thank you for your determination.
I'm joined now by GB News' national reporter, our man Charlie Peters, live from the scene there in Waterlooville. Charlie Peters, rousing stuff there from Suella Braverman, and I think the key point, she was saying this is not just a victory for Waterlooville, but potentially as part of a nationwide pushback against asylum hotels. Tell us more, Charlie.
Well, Martin, if the Home Office plans had gone ahead, those migrants would have been moving into this high street right about now. But that didn't happen because her team, Suella Braverman's team, picked up on a rumour that they were intending to use a building just about 15 metres behind me, converted flats to house around 35 people in those premises. Now, Clear Springs, the company that managed that effort, they said that they emailed the council several times, but the council said they spoke to someone who'd left the council. It was no longer working then, so the emails weren't picked up on. The communication did not happen, and so the Home Office believed there were no objections and there were no problems with housing some 35 asylum seekers, or as Suella Braverman puts it, illegal migrants in this area on this high street. Well, when that news got out, a fortnight ago, we had 1,000 protesters here. Reacting to that, we had 10,000 people signing a petition saying they did not want that in Waterlooville. Those plans have now been dropped. And as you said, Martin, Suella Braverman said that that could have been a victory, not just for Waterlooville, but for the whole country. I asked her about that a moment ago. Suella Braverman, you've given a very impassioned speech there about the situation in the town. Now, you said, crucially, that you think that this information had been kept away from people about the block behind me being used to house asylum seekers. Does this show the power of people in Waterlooville to stop that from going ahead?
Without a doubt, Charlie. Listen, I think this is a great victory for the people of Waterlooville. That's why I'm here. not to grandstand or claim victory. This is to say thank you to the people. They protested peacefully and respectfully. They signed my petition in the thousands, and they supported local Conservative councillors who exposed this plan. And you're absolutely right. This was discovered by accident. This was discovered by accident by local Conservative councillors. They came to me and we exposed it and we blew the whistle. And effectively, with the groundswell of opinion, we shamed and embarrassed the council and the Home Office into stopping their plan. So all credit to the people of Waterlooville.
That's why the council here said that it was 36 people, most of them in families. Now, you had a lot of concern about men, undocumented men in local areas. Did that change your perspective? You thought they could have been just families needed help staying in those buildings behind me?
No. Over 90% of illegal arrivals are men of fighting age, young men, young single men. And it's very hard to actually find families to accommodate and populate sites around the country. I saw that as Home Secretary. And so very often councils might promise to house families, women and children, but it doesn't always materialise that way because they are very few and far between.
And obviously these people need to go somewhere. There have been 50,000 arrivals since Labour came into power. Local areas generally don't want these people in their local areas. We spoke to someone earlier who said that there should now be camps set up in the country to house asylum seekers. What do you make of that? The small boats migrants?
Well, I do think that they should be kept in bespoke tented accommodation largely, which is not residential buildings, because we have thousands of people just in Havant alone who are in need of social housing, who are declared homeless. They should be put first. We have veterans who are homeless around the country. They should be put into this accommodation. And frankly, we should not be rolling out the red carpet and putting people in 5-star luxury accommodation or luxury flats. That is not a good use of taxpayers' money, and it's frankly not fair.
And finally, you've had a bit of a battle with the local council here. They accused you of using inflammatory language. What's your reaction to that and them saying that you were spreading misinformation about this situation here?
Well, listen, they were caught red-handed and they had to deflect. So, of course, they're going to argue about tone, and they didn't quite call me racist, but they were trying to find the next best thing, so they went for inflammatory. And at the end of the day, it's not inflammatory to speak up for your community. It's not inflammatory to say, no, we don't want illegal migrants in our town centre, which is going through a regeneration project. And it's not inflammatory to want to secure our borders. I speak for thousands of people, and unfortunately, Havant Borough Council should hang their heads in shame for failing local people.
There'll be a lot of nervousness, I think, in the Home Office and the government, don't you think? Because this local area has shown that when there is a protest and when there is sufficient local action, they might have to move it along. Do you think this could inspire more protests in areas where asylum seekers are looking to be accommodated?
I do. People have had enough, and people feel scared, they feel angry, but most importantly, they feel powerless. They don't feel like anybody in Westminster, any politician is really doing anything about this crisis or taking it seriously. Instead, they're being dismissed as far right or inflammatory, and there's no honesty. And so people feel powerless, and that's why they're taking to the streets, albeit peacefully in Waterlooville, of which I'm very proud, but they feel that's the only option they have left to do something and feel some kind of agency over this crisis which is sweeping our country.
Well, Suella Braverman also urged locals here in Waterlooville to remain vigilant. She said that they could still try again, the Home Office, in seeking to accommodate asylum seekers or illegal migrants, as Ms Braverman puts it, in this local area. But I think that is potentially quite unlikely, because we've seen the strength of reaction here from the locals, the fact that they mobilised so rapidly based on local information to provide that 1,000-strong protest and 10,000 signatures to that petition. But the locals I've spoken to, they've said that they've heard that call. They will remain vigilant. They're keeping their eyes and ears peeled, and they're checking to see, essentially, if other accommodation in the area could be used to house asylum seekers. And that's that very strong line we've heard from Suella Braverman there, Martin. Where can they go? 50,000 arrivals since the Labour government arrived. And Suella Braverman's idea is potentially to put them in specific accommodation sites. Could that mean camps? Could that mean former military bases? We don't know, but that's certainly a proposal she wants to put forward.
Charlie Peters there, excellent reporting from Waterlooville, as ever there with the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. Charlie Peters, thank you very much once again, doing God's work. Back to the studio now, and I'm joined by the Labour Lambeth councillor and the member of Momentum's National Coordinating Group, Martin Abrams. Martin, a pleasure to have your company.
Good evening, Martin.
Suella Braverman, resolute there. She's saying people feel scared. They feel powerless. There's no honesty in politics. No MP is doing anything. And yet they're called far right. Isn't that part of the problem? Sir Keir Starmer branded people who have a poignant and irrelevant protest, called them far right. That didn't help at all.
Well, it's interesting to see Suella Braverman out on our screens again, and I think the reason for that is a number of reasons, Martin. She's desperately trying to seek a bit of relevance after being shunned by Kemi Badenoch from going back into the shadow cabinet, and I think she's probably eyeing up her political future as well, which my view is that's probably outside of the Conservative Party. I wouldn't be surprised if she's eyeing up a defection to Reform at some point in the near future. That's been talked about a lot. So she's obviously putting herself out and about to try and get a bit of relevance. But she has got a bit of a brass neck, though, because let's not forget, she was Home Secretary that oversaw the absolute shambles of the Bibi Stockholm barge, the Rwanda plan, which cost hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money.
That was all stopped by lefty lawyers. Well,
it wasn't. The whole plan was absolutely shambolic in the first place, and they ended up paying out hundreds of millions of pounds to the Rwandan government before a single, illegal, migrant, if that's how you want to describe them,
scrap that on day one, and things have got worse, 50,000 worse.
Well, I think you have to put into context these irregular migration.
Illegal.
Migrants, OK, let's call it illegal, because, it is illegal to cross the channel on a small boat, migrants into our country. That's 50,000. OK, that is significantly more on previous years. But when you look at how that stacks in terms of our overall immigration, it's a very, very small proportion. The vast majority of migration to this country is on legal routes, Martin, through work visas or through student
and that's totally
visas.
out of control too. But look, let's get back to the case in point. We have a huge problem with illegal immigration. It sunk the Conservatives. It will sure as night follows day sink the Labour Party unless they get a grip. Hotels aren't working. The protests won't go away. Accommodation like this is now being resisted left, right and centre. You were wincing there when Suella Braverman was saying they should be put in tented camps.
Yeah, because, that's just completely inhumane, Martin.
Why is it?
Because that just brings up images of concentration camps.
Oh, come on.
The British history of being the first country to actually develop concentration camps in southern Africa during the Boer War brings back, awful memories of how, the colonial British history treated people.
Martin, what you're doing here is typical, if I may say, of people from the left. You're taking something from British history and spinning it to encompass the worst. The Brits had absolutely nothing to do with the Holocaust. In fact, it was the Brits that ended the Holocaust. And Brits, I may say, were incredibly welcoming to those fleeing the Holocaust. In fact, we had a guest in that very chair earlier on, Rafe Hadelmonku, who said 250,000 Polish fled the Holocaust and they were put in containment camps in Britain, no problem. In fact, his relatives got married there and fell in love there. There was no problem. The problem is left-wing people these days comparing it to the Holocaust when it'd be nothing of the sort.
Well, and that includes my family history as well, Martin. My great-grandparents came over here from Eastern Europe in the 1920s, fleeing the pogroms of Eastern Europe at that time. And, Britain has a rich history of welcoming migrants. You don't have to look that far back either. If we look at what's been happening in Ukraine, there was a scheme for Ukrainian people to come over here during the war.
But Martin, the clear difference is that was a war that the United Kingdom was supporting, and you cannot compare people jumping on a dinghy fleeing France, coming from a place like Afghanistan with no criminal records, don't know who these people are. You cannot equate the Holocaust. You cannot equate a genuine, legitimate support of a war to people simply invading Britain. That's the word that's being used now, gaming the system.
Yeah, well, it's not an invasion. You know, 50,000 people coming over on small votes is not an invasion.
Well,
okay?
how big does it have to be to qualify for an invasion?
Well, I'm not sure that you can put a measure. I'm not sure you can put a measurement on that. But to use the word of an invasion, when our population is over 68 million, 50,000 is an absolute drop in the ocean. And
where do we draw the line then?
Well,
just have open borders forever?
Absolutely, absolutely not. That's not going to work. I equate this to the disaster of what's been happening with the war on drugs. If you keep criminalising something, but the demand is there, because the demand is there for these criminal gangs to get these people across the channel. If you keep criminalising something, then you will basically ensure that demand remains there. The war on drugs.
So we roll out the red carpet?
No, not at all. Not at all. What you need, though, are safe and legal routes.
We had that with Ukraine, with Hong Kong,
and it worked.
with Afghanistan.
And it worked.
We paid our way. These people aren't coming here illegally. They're coming here illegally, and it will sink this government unless they get a grip. 200,000
people came over from Ukraine, and they were welcomed into this country. They were housed by people, often by people's generosity. The view of the Ukrainian migrants.
Expense.
Well, a lot of the expense went, on things like providing housing. I won't ignore that, but they were also allowed to work in this country. The big problem with these migrants that are waiting for their asylum applications is they are essentially waiting in limbo.
Why don't we move them all to Lambeth? Why don't we move them all to Lambeth, your constituency?
Actually, there are quite a few migrant hotels in Lambeth.
There are 551 asylum seekers in Lambeth. That really is a drop in the ocean. Let's move more to your constituency. How can that go down with your electorate?
Unfortunately, there isn't enough housing in Lambeth to house all these people. That's also where the pressures are coming, Martin.
Yeah, because they've all been taken by asylum seekers. Martin Abrams, I've been told we have to move on, but look, it's always a pleasure to get you in the studio. Now, in a moment, amidst allegations of covering up alleged offences by asylum seekers, police have now been urged to publish ethnicity and nationality data of high-profile suspects. That's next.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel. Wake up with a familiar face. She's back on breakfast television. Penny Smith returns.
Miss me? Well, I'm here and I brought the coffee.
And we're reuniting to brighten your morning.
It's just like old times, only better.
So join Penny and me next Monday and Tuesday only on GB News Breakfast.
Welcome back to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. So, have the authorities finally learned the lessons of the Southport killings? Well, who could forget the fact that Merseyside police refrained from issuing the then suspect's name and background for long enough to leave a dangerous information vacuum. Now, at the time, we were told, even by the Prime Minister himself, that certain information had to be restricted because of contempt of court laws. But since then, numerous cases we've seen of a number of alleged sexual offences emerging with reports suggesting a number of the suspects are, in fact, asylum seekers. Now, this has, of course, led to a huge number of protests around the country, particularly outside migrant hotels. Well, today, the National Police Chiefs Council has issued fresh guidance encouraging forces to disclose the ethnicity and the nationality of suspects charged in high-profile and sensitive investigations in what is marked as a break from the status quo. I'm joined now by the former senior advisor at the Counter-Extremism Project at the Tony Blair Institute, Ian Atchison. Ian, always an absolute pleasure. We've been told over and over, Ian, that we can't release sensitive information because of community cohesion. I put it to you that the great majority of the British public feel that that is because the system, the establishment, is protecting ethnic minorities.
Hi, Martin. Nice to be with you. And just for clarity, I don't work for the Tony Blair Institute. That would give Mr. Blair a case of the vapours, I think. But yes, I mean, the information that's come out today from the National Police Chiefs Council, I'd sort of give 1.5 cheers for. I mean, finally, they have come out with some guidance. But the guidance is strictly limited and it's very woolly. In other words, what the NPCC is saying to chiefs around the country is that there are some circumstances where you might want to disclose the details, the biographical details, the ethnicity, perhaps the immigration status of people who are suspected of serious crimes, but only at the point of charge. Now, my problem with this is that if you look at the, I'm sure you know this, the chronology of events that followed Axel Rudakabana's murderous attack on children in Southport, by the time he was charged, which incidentally was good work by Merseyside police to get him to that point, but by the time he was charged, they had mangled the information about him to such an extent that actually we had at least 5 major disturbances that had already happened across the country, and of course that contagion then spread. So I think the information that should have been given out, or the guidance that should have been given out, first of all, is nothing more than common sense for police chiefs that have operational independence, and that is to use their own judgment to say at the earliest possible point of a serious offence being committed, which may have an impact on community cohesion, to use that rather well-worn phrase that is sometimes misapplied, but in any case, to be able to release those details. Had that been the case in relation to Southport massacre, some of that violence, the sting might have been taken out of it. As it was, it left a void, as you've said, where that was exploited, and the lies were halfway around the world before the police had their boots on. Merseyside police, of course, as you know, Martin, then realised the error of their ways when it came to that dreadful event in May, when a man drove his car into a crowd celebrating a football match in Liverpool, where it was, I think, 2 hours after the arrest that they had released information, including the ethnicity, saying this was a white British man who had been arrested. And in doing so, I think they headed off with what could have been very serious disorder around the country. We are at a bit of a tinderbox moment here. And, I think it's incumbent on the bureaucracy, the architecture of policing in this country, the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing to be very clear and direct with police chiefs and their policing and crime commissioners, incidentally, who ought to be on top of this to say, get the information out, the fullest information, as soon as possible to the public, because trust in policing has taken a very severe beating as a result of misinformation, mishandling of information, and we really don't want any more of that.
I totally agree. Ian Ashton, thank you very much. Just to point out that it's still an active case, that Liverpool case. So, yeah, let's bear in mind that. Thank you very much, Ian Ashton. Always a pleasure. Now, the Home Office told GB News this. The public and police forces themselves want greater clarity on when, why and how information is released and the legitimate and compelling reasons it may need to be withheld. Now, moving on, here was the shocking moment. The Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner suggested the public should, in fact, take matters into their own hands when faced with criminality.
If you've got someone in your store now stealing from you, call 999. Also, ideally, try and stop them leaving. You know, don't just stand there and watch, which a lot of people do, which frustrates me. You know, they push through the barrier at Tube Station, the staff are doing nothing. I agree, they're not, that's terrible, but you're the idiot standing there with a mobile phone. You're not doing anything either, are you?
So was this an irresponsible thing for a senior copper to say, or does he have a point? Well, let's join my next studio guest, former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley. Peter, it's all fair and well for a copper to say there, oh, you should all be a have-a-go hero, but we saw on the tube that butt-naked commuter who was exposing himself in front of children. Four community-minded people stepped in, they dealt with it. Now they themselves may face a police probe. Look at those disgusting images on your screen. Peter Blexley, we see all too often have-a-go heroes find themselves being on the wrong end of the law.
Let me just point out, if I may, that that's a police and crime commissioner, not a police officer. An elected Tory who represents Thames Valley and is their police and crime commissioner, and quite frankly, an idiot. Is an absolute oaf, a fool, because in the week that an alleged shoplifter died after being tackled by a member of the public, he comes out with this kind of drivel. Of course, if you are extremely physically fit, you are trained in self-defence, and you are trained to a government level in restraint techniques, then maybe you'll get involved when there's a crime. But to suggest that the shoplifting epidemic is all our fault and that we should do, what should we have, a new national pastime, Saturday afternoon, got a couple of hours to spare, pop down to Tesco's, catch yourself a shoplifter. What utter nonsense.
And the fact of the matter is, Peter, beautifully put, and the fact of the matter is, if you did, you know, show your back of a hand to somebody in the heat of a moment, you'd probably find out, oh, they've got mental health issues, oh, they're on a protected, representatives list or something. You would find yourself probably in hot water. That's the problem.
That's if you're fortunate enough not to have 8 inches of stainless steel embedded into you by some rampant murderous shoplifter who could pull a blade. It's a ridiculous, irresponsible, pathetic kind of set of instructions to issue. Of course, if you tick those boxes, you're a Royal Marine, you're trained in restraint techniques, you're incredibly fit and you know how to defend yourself and you want to get involved, then do that. But for general members of the public who actually, he called idiots because they film these people committing crimes, you're not an idiot if you film someone committing a crime. You're gathering evidence, you're helping the police, you're doing the right thing.
But by the same token, though, Peter, and by the way, they did say that guy getting his buttocks out there is mentally ill. Well, that's self-evident, I would say. But on a serious point, if people do see a crime going on, a lot of people do feel their responsibility. Often we hear of terrible crimes happening because the public simply stand by or turn a blind eye, they act in a cowardly way. Some people do feel they have a public responsibility to step in.
And all credit to them, but that is if you are suitably trained, experienced, or in such numbers that you can cater for any eventuality. Those disgusting scenes that we saw on the train, those young men that intervened, fair play to them. They got that man restrained and off that train. And, of course, he was later sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Clearly a very, very ill person, behaving disgustingly. That situation, yes, but please, everybody, be aware of the dangers that our streets carry in 2025.
And more to the point, Peter Blexley, is this the police offloading their own responsibility? They should be the ones nicking these fellas.
That's the Police and Crime Commissioner from Thames Valley, who I suspect suspect has never rolled around the pavement with a shoplifter, a burglar or a robber, doesn't know what he's talking about. If you want to get involved, please, dynamic risk assessment, be physically capable, be suitably trained, because in this day and age of some lazy policing, if you were to injure someone, a shoplifter, you can guarantee there'd be an investigation into your behaviour.
Australia, where they went to claims direct and you find yourself in a whole lot of hot water. Peter Blexley, the bastion of common sense, as ever. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on Farage. An absolute pleasure. Now, in a moment, is Big Brother watching you? Because the police have rolled out facial recognition vans to crack down on serious offenders. I see these every single day on my way through London. Is that a good way of tackling crime? Or are we sliding down a slippery slope towards a surveillance society? That's next.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Across some southern parts of Europe tomorrow, there will be some showery rain, which could turn heavy and perhaps even thundery. But a big talking point is still the exceptional heat affecting parts of Portugal, Spain and France. Yesterday, temperatures were in the low to mid-40s in some places. The heat's going to ease a little, but it's going to return again as we go towards the weekend. Further east, some heavy showery rain, like I mentioned, could be a bit thundery at times, particularly across parts of Italy. Elsewhere, it's looking fine and sunny for many through the outlook.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the next 24 hours, there will be a few thundery showers across northern parts in particular, but it is also staying hot for many of us. That's because we're sandwiched in between low pressure to the west and high pressure to the east. So we have a southerly flow across us, dragging in that very warm or hot air. Now, as we go overnight, there will still be a few showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland in particular, and some of them could be a bit heavy and thundery, but most places will have a dry night. Also a lot of clear skies around, but because of that warm, humid air across us, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. So another warm, sticky night for many of us. Then as we go through tomorrow, a dry start to the day for most of us, but even quite early on, a few showers are quite possible, particularly around western parts of Scotland, maybe towards the north as well, and they could be heavy, they could be thundery. Also some showers first thing possible for Northern Ireland, some parts of northern England and down the western coast of England and Wales. And some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, but most places will be avoiding them and having a fine start to the day. Now, as we go through the morning and into the afternoon, many places staying dry with some decent sunshine, but across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland in particular, there's the risk of the showers turning a bit more intense, a bit more frequent, and there could be some heavy bursts mixed in with them. Also some frequent lightning and some hail and thunder, so do watch out. There could be some disruption as a result. Temperatures for many won't be quite as high as today, but nonetheless in the sunshine still feeling pretty hot. Now, as we go into Friday, it's looking a little bit dry, and as much as there will still be a few showers around across some parts of Scotland, but not as many as through the next 24 hours or so. And worth bearing in mind, a bit more cloud towards the northeast may make things feel a little bit fresher, but generally through Friday, through the weekend, lots of sunshine on offer, and in that sunshine still feeling hot.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to a very lively Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. So, is Big Brother watching you? Well, facial recognition vans are now being rolled out all across England in a major policing crackdown. Now, ministers say that the technology will help catch dangerous criminals, from rapists to violent offenders, but civil liberties groups warn it's a dangerous step towards a surveillance state. And here was the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, earlier.
This is about using technology that can catch criminals who are wanted for the most serious crimes and keep the public safe.
Well, I'm joined in the studio in Westminster now by Dr. Luke Roberts, who's the advisor at the Centre of Science and Policy at the University of Cambridge and also the CEO of Resolve Consultants. Luke, pleasure to have your company. I see these wagons every day. I commute through London. They're on Camberwell High Street. They've got their periscopes up. They're harvesting data in real time. But I also see people walking around in full face masks, in crash helmets, in balaclavas. And my point is this: a bad guy will know how to dodge this technology. The rest of us, meanwhile, are constantly being monitored. Why should I and every other law-abiding society pay because a few bad guys aren't following the law?
Well, I think that's a great question, and thank you for having me, Martin, on the show. I think one of the challenges that we're facing with this new technology is in the excitement to unroll it. We haven't really fully understood yet the consequences for communities and for policing as well, actually. And so I think your point is spot on in terms of, yes, you can have it in a location, but actually for particular types of criminality, they will know the spot, they will find workarounds, they will find ways to circumvent it. And so to what extent it is a useful technology is yet to be proven. I think some of the statistics that the Home Secretary gave, although very exciting from a ministerial perspective, it's very hard to know the context of them, like compared to what? Like compared to fully funded, well-resourced policing, these vans work, compared to the fact that the police forces have had so many resources taken away from them, that this is a cheaper form of policing as well. So I think context really matters within this situation.
People are also concerned about, they say they're scanning the faces of those against a list of wanted people. Do we know that that's the case? A lot of people worry that this may be cross-tabulated against things like the DVLA database. You've got a photograph on your passport, your photograph on your driving licence. Will the old Bill have access to that? And if I'm walking down a high street, am I being logged, monitored and recorded and stored? What happens to the data?
Well, I think this is where we're facing a kind of a black box situation because there has been no ethics board, no community engagement. We genuinely don't know, apart from what the police say and probably the company that designed this, that we have to trust that. And I think one of the things that would really help in this situation is the ability for the public to have a proper discourse about what feels right to us, because can I opt out? I know the data is deleted, but the temptation of mission creep becomes really seductive to both police forces who want to catch more bad guys, but also to ministers who say, look, if we can link it to people's benefits, or we can link it to the DVLA, as you say, we can widen the net, and the risk is the net keeps on widening without any form of scrutiny or governance around it.
Now, the Home Secretary will point out this technology in London alone has made 580 arrests in 12 months, including 52 registered sex offenders who are breaching their bail conditions. But you could nick that many people by just putting more bobbies on the beat.
Well, again, this is why I said it's very hard to take the numbers in isolation compared to having more safer neighbourhood officers, more safer schools, police officers. So without that context, it becomes very hard to go, well, over 12 months, that might be the best number ever for a police force, or it might be absolutely abysmal. But again, because we don't have the context in which the data is being used, it becomes really hard to make the kinds of judgments that you're interested in.
Do you think that there's a direction of travel that because things appear so bad, that people might surrender their civil liberties? For example, there are so many violent crimes now, people might think, do you know what, I used to be against this, but now I've changed my mind. For example, Tony Blair would love all of us to be walking barcodes because they can't control our borders, therefore we should all have ID cards. Is this kind of technology actually an admission that they've lost control of our streets and they expect all of us, even the law-abiding, to surrender to that?
I think there's a real danger of the loss of freedom of assembly. And so whenever you're going to convene and the police are going to monitor you? Are you going to be on these databases? So I think you're getting really to the heart of the question about what is the ethics that we want to accept as a society. Particularly, we say there are a certain number of people who will commit violent, harmful crimes, and we recognise what's the best way to catch them. Is AI a useful tool in a police officer's mind? Absolutely. But to what extent does that then affect the rest of us in society? And how do I get to opt out of these types of experiences? So I know, for example, they've said, well, we'll put signs up. So we're going to use a really old technology to inform you of a really advanced technology. And how many people look up these days when they're walking to look at this? So I think there is a real risk without a proper conversation and without public engagement in this technology about where does the surveillance society start to creep in and how far does it go?
And to my first point, Luke, if I could, for this to effectively work, you would surely need to ban face coverings. That would mean balaclavas, perhaps even things like burqas. I put it to you, it would be a cold day in hell before the Labour Party or the police forces say no face coverings in Britain. And I put it to you again, that it wouldn't be policing without fear and favour. Certain people would get away without their faces being scanned.
Absolutely, and I think, so let's take, this might seem like a funny example, but how does this work on Halloween?
Yeah, it's a valid point.
Like we say there's one day where facial recognition software is not going to be used at all. So then what does that say about the way in which we police society? So again, I think there's a real danger that the technology is moving so fast that police forces, and to be fair, this seems like a moment where police forces have been innovative, but they haven't had the political support, they haven't had the public consultation, and they haven't had the evidence base to support this decision at the moment, Martin.
Dr. Luke Roberts, a fantastic and fruitful conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. Please come back. Excellent guest. And I think you're dead right about Halloween. It makes a farce of it. Could indeed be a horror show. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Now, in a moment, I'll be speaking to JD Vance's UK confidant about the Vice President's UK visit amidst a new White House report castigating the British government's record on free speech. That's next.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain. So he can say whatever he wants. A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Farage Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubry. Now, incredible scenes emerged from the Cotswolds last night when former Apprentice star Thomas Bosch Skinner shared this picture online with the US President J.D. Vance. Now, the barbecue meal also had in attendance Tory MP Danny Kruger and my next guest, Cambridge philosophy professor James Orr. The Vice President also met with Reform UK leader Nigel Farage earlier today as well. But the Vice President's interest in British politics is no secret. Indeed, a new White House report out today has castigated the British government's record on human rights with a specific focus on attacks on freedom of speech. Now, while we get our next guest up, I'm joined by the host of State of the Nation, Tom Harwood. Tom, let's have a chat about J.D. Vance's stop in Britain. Let's start with something which I think is fascinating. Nigel Farage there name-checked. Thomas Bosch Skinner was on the guest list.
Yes.
Robert Jenrick, and I believe you said Chris Philp as well. But there's one big name missing from that list, Kemi Badenoch. What on earth is going on? Has she been blanked?
Well, Kemi Badenoch's team tell us that she was in the Isle of Wight and that this was a diary clash that couldn't be moved. It couldn't be sorted out, that they couldn't meet. Of course, they've met before. They count each other as friends, I am told. The last time they met, they did take a selfie, plastered it all over social media and the like. But it is strange, I think, and worth noting upon that the leader of His Majesty's opposition did not meet with the Vice President last night and hasn't been able to make time. She says that it's because it was of long-standing commitments in the Isle of Wight, one of which, of course, was to be interviewed by our very own political editor, Christopher Hope. Now, as important as Christopher Hope is, and I want to say absolutely nothing to denigrate his huge importance here, I don't think he would have minded to have been bumped for Kemi Badenoch to have met J.D. Vance. I think there is something slightly odd going on there when these diaries couldn't have been made to meet. Perhaps there's something deeper.
Let's talk next about, of course, a long-standing beef of J.D. Vance is what he says, quotes, serious restrictions on free speech in the UK. Free speech has been chilled, he said, particularly post-Southport. That's a specific barbed attack on Sir Keir Starmer, isn't it?
And it's exactly what he referenced in his Munich Security Conference speech, the speech that absolutely blew the roof off that security conference. Very often people saying exactly the same sort of thing to each other. But J.D. Vance brought something very different to that speech and has brought that different conversation to the United Kingdom. Many people sort of see him as the intellectual heft behind the MAGA movement. Trump, of course, a great speaker, very charismatic, can fill out stadia, but perhaps not so much a details man. And we saw that with his visit to Scotland. When he was asked about small boats, Keir Starmer was able to say, look, we've absolutely beared down on this problem, and then Donald Trump said he was doing a fantastic job. Well, I'm not so sure that J.D. Vance would have been so easily won over by Keir Starmer or so easily flattering of Keir Starmer, because he's generally a details guy who has specific points to bring, whether that, of course, is the arrest of Lucy Connolly and the imprisonment of her over a tweet, or indeed he's referenced arrests of individuals silently praying outside of abortion clinics as well. These are specific areas of what he believes are egregious breaches of free speech that would not have been allowed in the United States of America, but are increasingly happening across the United Kingdom and Europe in general.
He's also talking about the human rights situation has worsened in Britain in 2024. You referenced there Lucy Connolly. That's been a constant bugbear of his. But he also turned his flamethrower, if you like, on the Online Safety Act. Now, of course, much heralded as a child protection issue, pushed back by one of his guests, Nigel Farage, and actually it goes further than that. It restricts liberty in the online arena. And, of course, a lot of those companies, big tech companies, are American companies. This is British legislation clamping down on the free speech, not just in Britain, but of American big tech companies. Tom Howard, I suspect this one will rumble on.
I certainly think it will, not least because there are American companies, not even the biggest big tech companies, but American websites hosting their own sites on their own servers on American soil that are being sent legal letters by Ofcom in Britain.
That's ridiculous.
Saying you are not complying with the British Online Safety Act. We've interviewed lawyers on this channel who are representing some of these firms that are receiving these threatening letters, threatening fines and imprisonment, saying, hang on, Did 1776 not happen? The Brits are trying to sort of exercise jurisdiction over the United States of America, telling an American company what it can or cannot do. And that is the extraordinary thing about the Online Safety Act, because assuming the internet is a global thing, you need to have purview over these other companies in order to make them comply. Otherwise, we seal off our internet from the rest of the world.
And it's a great point because, of course, Trump told Brussels to go whistle when they tried to control big tech. Might this test a special relationship? I digress. You're hosting State of the Nation tonight. What's on your menu, Tom?
Yes, absolutely. The most extraordinary news, given the soundbite that the Labour Party has been pushing, not only through the election, but also in government too. Smash the gangs. We are told, smash the gangs, they say, almost ad nauseum. And yet, have the gangs been smashed?
No.
Well, an extraordinary front page of the Independent newspaper this morning, which actually revealed that under Labour, there are fewer arrests of people smuggling gang members than there were in the previous year under the previous government.
16% less.
There has been a precipitous drop in the number of arrests of those gang members. So are these gangs being smashed? Well, despite £100 million extra to these investigations, despite the joining up of counter-terror powers, the National Crime Agency, Border Command, all of these different areas, we are arresting fewer gang members. I mean, it is the most extraordinary thing, and it leads into this peculiar question of what is the strategy of this government? If they're not smashing the gangs, they're not stopping the boats, the numbers are 50% up since their new deal with France, what on earth is the policy?
Well, now we see the mega dinghies rolling in. Stick around, State of the Nation, for a mega ding-dong. It is Tom Harwood up next. I'll be back tomorrow 3 till 6 p.m. Have a fantastic evening, but first, here is your weather forecast. Monego.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through the next 24 hours, there will be a few thundery showers across northern parts in particular, but it is also staying hot for many of us. That's because we're sandwiched in between low pressure to the west and high pressure to the east. So we have a southerly flow across us, dragging in that very warm or hot air. Now, as we go overnight, there will still be a few showers across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland in particular, and some of them could be a bit heavy and thundery, but most places will have a dry night. Also a lot of clear skies around, but because of that warm, humid air across us, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. So another warm, sticky night for many of us. Then as we go through tomorrow, a dry start to the day for most of us, but even quite early on, a few showers are quite possible, particularly around western parts of Scotland, maybe towards the north as well, and they could be heavy, they could be thundery. Also some showers first thing possible for Northern Ireland, some parts of northern England and down the western coast of England and Wales. And some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side, but most places will be avoiding them and having a fine start to the day. Now, as we go through the morning and into the afternoon, many places staying dry with some decent sunshine, but across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland in particular, there's the risk of the showers turning a bit more intense, a bit more frequent, and there could be some heavy bursts mixed in with them. Also some frequent lightning and some hail and thunder, so do watch out. There could be some disruption as a result. Temperatures for many won't be quite